obsession started slowly at first. A glance here, a lingering stare there. I found myself looking for her everywhere, at the coffee shop in the mornings, in the parking lot at work, on my evening walks through the park. Her name was Lisa, and she was beautiful. Long, dark hair that cascaded over her shoulders in gentle waves, piercing green eyes that seemed to look right through me, and a smile that made my heart skip a beat every time I saw it. She didn't know me. We had never spoken, but I felt like I knew her, like we had some deep connection that went beyond words. I started finding excuses to be places I knew she would be. I switched my morning coffee shop and my evening walking route. I timed my arrival and departure from work to match hers. A nod or brief smile as we passed each other became the highlight of my day. It wasn't enough though. I wanted more. I started following her home, keeping my distance at first. Then slowly over time I got closer. I learned her habits, her schedules. I knew where she would be and when. I was always watching, waiting, hoping for another glimpse, another nod, another smile. My apartment walls slowly filled with pictures of her going about her days. A collage of memories and moments frozen in time. Her beauty overwhelmed me, consumed me. I spent hours gazing at the wall, reliving each photo in vivid detail. Everything else in my life faded away. There was only her. Things escalated the night I followed her home from a late night at the office. I watched her pull into the driveway, walk up to the front door, and let herself in. I waited until the lights flicked off inside before making my way to the back door and slowly turning the handle. Unlocked, my heart was pounding as I slipped inside. I could smell her perfume lingering in the air as I crept room to room on the first floor. The house was dark and quiet. I made my way up the stairs, taking in the photos lining the wall. Pictures of her smiling, laughing. Without me, an irrational jealousy clawed up inside of me. I paused outside the master bedroom door, her light snores barely audible through the crack. My hands trembled, breaths grew rapid and shallow as I gently pushed open the door. And there she was, an angel bathed in moonlight, chest slowly rising and falling in peaceful slumber. I stood frozen, wide-eyed, overwhelmed by the vision before me. It took all my strength not to rush to her bedside and caress her hair as I had imagined so many times. A floorboard squeaked under my weight, and her eyes fluttered open, confused, then fearful. My heart shattered as a scream pierced the silence, shattering our perfect moment. I panicked, turned and ran. I panicked, turned and ran. Out of the house, down the street, and into the night. I knew then what I had to do. She may not have realized it yet, but we belonged together. I started meticulously planning, waiting for the right opportunity. 2 long weeks later, it finally came. I pulled up outside her house, dressed in uniform, driving a van just like the pest control company she always used. She smiled warmly as she opened the door, expecting the scheduled appointment. In my panicked state, I'd forgotten to mask, forgotten that she would recognize me from our many chance encounters. Her smile faded as recognition set in. She tried to slam the door, but I was quicker, forcing my way inside. Her screams filled the air as the struggle ensued. But I had the advantage, and it wasn't long before she was still, her terrified eyes locked on mine as I carried her limp body out the back door. I drove with purpose, winding my way along the isolated country roads outside of town. The perfect spot to begin our new life together. My secluded cabin came into view. I had worked hard to make it feel like home for when this day finally came. I gazed down at her crumpled on the floor of the van as I pulled up outside. This was it, our fresh start. I gently lifted her, cradling her sleeping body in my arms. Lisa looked so peaceful, I thought so beautiful. As I made my way inside and laid her on the bed we would now share, I knew this was the first day of forever. At long last, we would be together. I've always been a pretty obsessive person when I get interested in something. I tend to dive in headfirst without reservation. Chess was an early obsession in high school. I read dozens of strategy books, spent hours playing online, and even competed in local tournaments. For a while, chess consumed me. My latest obsession is considerably darker. It started innocently enough 6 months ago when I met Gabriella at a coffee shop near my office. She had the most mesmerizing green eyes and a smile that lit up the room. We hit it off right away and began dating shortly after. Things moved fast, as they often do with new relationships. We were spending every free moment together within a few weeks. I was smitten. Gabriella was stunning, charming, and adventurous, almost too good to be true. About 2 months in, I began noticing odd little details about her. She would hesitate for a split second when I asked about her day, or casually redirect conversations away from her past. Gabriella also had a habit of turning her phone away when text messages popped up, angling the screen out of my view. My old obsessive tendencies kicked in as I became increasingly suspicious. Something didn't add up. I started digging for information and asking probing questions to test her story. A trickle of small inconsistencies slowly turned into a flood. It became clear she was lying about parts of her life. I told myself to let it go and trust Gabriella, but I couldn't stop obsessing over the web of untruths. I had to know more. One night, while Gabriella was sleeping, I grabbed her phone and copied everything onto my laptop. I felt a rush as I scrolled through her messages, emails, photos. Hours of intense reading uncovered her many secrets. A false name, a string of exes she hid from me, massive debts. It was an entirely different person than who I thought I knew. I became withdrawn and angry as I pieced together Gabriella's real identity. Our whirlwind romance now seemed staged, part of an elaborate ruse to take advantage of me. Fury overwhelmed my shock and sadness. This deception could not stand. Gabriella sensed the shift in my feelings and started questioning me. But the more she probed, the more I retreated into an internal world of planning and preparation. She had lied to me for the last time. It was easy enough to hide my activities from Gabriella. She grew increasingly upset by my cold demeanor, but had no idea what was coming. The day finally arrived when all the pieces were in place to confront her. I invited Gabriella over for dinner that night, having staged my apartment for the discussion ahead. She arrived in a short black dress, visibly nervous about my recent distance. We ate in virtual silence, her unease palpable. Finally, I began laying out her web of lies, piece by piece. Gabriella froze, speechless, as I methodically outlined her deceit, using the hacked phone data. She stammeringly tried to explain the false identity and past relationships, but it was too late. The evidence was overwhelming. I saw Gabriella's fear grow with each revelation, my own adrenaline surging in response. She realized this was not a simple argument. When she tried to leave, I revealed my gun and forced her back to the table. The confrontation escalated quickly into violence, just as I intended. By the end, Gabriella lay broken, punished for her betrayal. I sat silently as her blood pooled on the floor, overcome with relief that the lies had been excised. She would never deceive me or anyone else again. I had solved the mystery of Gabriella's secrets. But new questions emerged from the carnage. What drove me to such vicious extremes? My obsessive tendencies clearly grew dangerous in the grip of jealousy and perceived betrayal. I thought I knew myself before this, but perhaps I was just as much a mystery as Gabriella ultimately was. The depth we can sink to when obsession takes hold are profound. I see that now, too late. What began as a passionate romance ended with me transformed into someone dangerous and unrecognizable, even to myself. I let obsession poison a relationship and bend me to its will. That loss of control terrifies me most of all. What else am I capable of? What other darkness might I uncover if someone provokes my obsessive focus again? Those questions haunt me as authorities close in, seeking their own answers about what happened here. My name is John, and I have a problem. Ever since I was young, I've had these urges, these violent impulses that I struggle to control. I see someone who angers or annoys me, and I have to literally clench my fists to stop myself from wrapping my hands around their throat. Most people go through life oblivious to the seething rage inside me, the monster that lurks just below the surface. It started small when I was a kid, harming animals and such. My poor dog didn't last long once my parents made the mistake of leaving us alone. I still remember the satisfying crack of its neck as I wrung the life from its body. As I grew older, my tastes matured. I found myself fixated on women. Beautiful, vibrant women full of life. I longed to see the light fade from their eyes as I choked the breath from their bodies. I would spend hours following them, learning their habits and routines until I knew everything about them, until I could take them at the moment of my choosing. 6 so far over the years. 6 lovely ladies that had the misfortune of catching my eye. I'm careful, meticulous. I watch and I wait until the perfect opportunity arises. I never leave behind evidence, never give the police anything to work with. The women simply vanish without a trace. Their bodies will never be found. But there is one who got away, a young woman named Anna who I stalked for weeks. She had long black hair and piercing green eyes. I witnessed her infectious laugh that lit up a room, her kindness as she stopped to pet every dog she saw on the streets, her passionate spirit at the protests she attended on weekends. Such beauty, such vibrancy. I knew I had to possess it, extinguish it. I was ready. I had prepared my kill room in the basement and set my tools aside. Chains, knives, bleach to clean away any evidence. The night I chose was cold and dark, perfect for snatching a victim off the streets unseen. I watched from the car as Anna said goodnight to her friends after a late night at the bar. I circled around the block and idled in the shadows of an alleyway, waiting for her to walk by. But as Anna's figure came into view, the heel of her boot caught on an uneven piece of sidewalk, and she stumbled forward. I gripped the steering wheel, ready to jump out and grab her. But before I could open the door, she righted herself and stepped into a nearby restaurant, walking up to a man at the counter I hadn't noticed before. She wrapped her arms around him affectionately, smiling up at him before they shared a kiss. In an instant, my opportunity was lost. Anna stayed by the man's side as they left the restaurant arm in arm. I slammed my fists against the steering wheel in frustration. She was supposed to be alone, vulnerable. This man had ruined everything. That was a month ago. And still, Anna occupies my thoughts. I drive by her apartment when I can, noting the man's car parked out front late into the night. An unwelcome obstacle in my fantasy. But I am nothing if not patient. Anna will be mine. I will find a way to remove this hindrance. This man who dares protect something that is rightfully my prey. Perhaps he will have an unfortunate accident. The tire on his car looks worn, ready to blow out and send the vehicle careening off the highway. Or maybe he will fall victim to an apparent break and gone wrong. So many options to dispose of a bothersome boyfriend. Anna has caught my eye in one way or another. I will add her light to my collection. The urge is too strong now to ignore. So here I wait in the darkness outside her home, biding my time. Soon, very soon, my moment will come. She will be alone, vulnerable once more, and I will be there to offer her a quick, painless end. To stare into the depths of her lovely eyes as the last flicker of life slips away. It's only a matter of time. She can sense it. I know she can. My malevolent presence hovering just out of sight. My twisted desire poisoning the air. Her days are numbered. The wheel is already in motion. Fate has marked her as mine. She will try to resist, to elude my grasp, but it's far too late. I have her scent now, and I will never let go. My name is John, and I have a problem. Ever since I was young, I've had these urges to hurt people. I don't know where they come from, but they are always there, gnawing away at me. Most of the time, I'm able to control myself. I go about my normal routine: work, home, sleep. The same dull pattern day after day. But eventually the urges start to build until I can't take it anymore. I need a release. That's when I go hunting. I scout out my prey carefully, usually women who are alone and vulnerable. I follow them for a while, getting to know their routines until I know the perfect time and place to strike. My heart pounds with excitement as I make my move. I wait in the shadows, and then everything becomes a blur. There's always a struggle at first, but they are no match for my strength. I overpower them easily, my hands around their necks, squeezing ever tighter as the life drains from their eyes. When it's over, I am filled with an incredible sense of relief and satisfaction. But it never lasts long. After a day or two, those dark desires start creeping back in. I know what I'm doing is wrong on some level. I'm not completely devoid of morality, but I can't seem to stop myself. Perhaps there is something defective in my brain wiring that makes me this way. Or maybe I just enjoy having power and control over my victims. My last hunt went perfectly. I had been following Rebecca for weeks. I knew she stayed late every Tuesday to work in her office alone. I waited patiently until she finally left, heading to her car in the near-empty parking garage. My opportunity had arrived. I came up behind her swiftly, one hand over her mouth, the other holding a rag doused in chloroform. She struggled fiercely as the chemical overwhelmed her. I enjoyed the fear in her eyes, the frantic, muffled screams behind my hand. But soon enough, she went limp in my arms. I stashed her unconscious body in the back of my van and drove to a remote cabin I owned outside the city. Now came my favorite part. I tied her to a chair and waited for her to wake up. The look of terror as she took in her surroundings was delicious. I could see her struggling against the ropes, mouth taped shut, unable to cry for help. I took my time with her. I wanted to savor every moment. First, I used my knife to cut away her clothing, leaving scratches and shallow cuts as I did. Her screams were stifled behind the tape, but I could see the pain and fear in her eyes. It spurred me on. I continue my slow torture over the next few hours, burning her flesh with a blowtorch, breaking her fingers one by one, carving into her skin, anything I could think of to cause maximum agony. Her muffled cries were like music to my ears. Eventually, she lost consciousness again. I debated finishing her off, but where would the fun be in that? Instead, I left her tied up, letting her wake again to the nightmare. Over the next 2 days, I repeated the process. Each time I tried new horrors upon her weakened body. She had long ago stopped begging and screaming behind the tape. Now her eyes seemed vacant, like her soul had retreated somewhere deep inside to escape the agony. Finally, I grew bored with my little plaything. It was time to end this hunt. I removed the tape from her mouth, but she did not scream or beg. She just stared at me with a dead, hollow look. I placed my hands around her bruised and battered throat and began to squeeze. It did not take long before her body went limp for the last time. Dumping her body was an easy affair. The cabin was remote and the lake nearby very deep. She would never be found. The water washed away all traces of my actions, and so I am free once again until the urges start to gnaw at my insides. Then it will be time to start scouting for my next victim. My little secret is safe. On the outside, I look just like anyone else leading a normal life. But inside, I harbor appetites too dark for most to comprehend. For now, they remain sated and under control. But it's only a matter of time before the hunger returns. I can already feel it stirring faintly in the back of my mind, growing stronger. The hunt will begin again soon.